Hey guys, tonight we're opening the silk curtains on one of the most decadent, controlled, and frankly strange corners of world history, Imperial China's bedroom politics. And you're not just visiting, you're about to become the emperor. Yeah, you're sitting there in sweatpants. But before you get too comfortable on your jade throne, let's be clear, you probably won't survive this. Not just because of the scheming concubines, over-ambitious eunuchs and relentless rituals, but because managing a harem of thousands while balancing political power and ancient beliefs about sex could be more deadly than battle. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your city and what time it is where you are. I'm curious where all my time-travelling emperors are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're reclining in the Hall of Mental Cultivation, the Emperor's private quarters deep within the Forbidden City. The air smells faintly of sandalwood and lamp oil. Outside, court officials are still scurrying like ants beneath the blood-orange dusk. But in here, everything slows. Your night isn't about reports or rebellion. It's about the roster. And yes, there's a literal bedroom roster. Your concubines, numbering in the thousands during peak dynasties like the Tang and Qing, are catalogued, ranked, and rotated with bureaucratic precision. A select few get summoned each night. The selection isn't random. Oh no, it's a process involving wooden name tags stored in a tray called the upupi, each inscribed with a woman's name and kept chilled in silver basins. Eunuchs. Pick them up, announce your choice, and then brace yourself. They carry the chosen concubine in a silk-covered blanket to your bedchamber. Yep, carried like a sleepy burrito, to make sure she doesn't sneak in poison, weapons, or pregnancy-enhancing charms. And she better be healthy. Before she even makes it to you, she's been inspected, bathed, perfumed, and often judged by a physician to ensure she's not secretly menstruating. Because in traditional Chinese medicine, that was a big, cosmic no. Everything about imperial sex is wrapped in ritual, from the hour it occurs, always scheduled around lucky times, to the direction the bed faces. You, the son of heaven, must channel harmony through your essence. This isn't just pleasure, it's politics, metaphysics, and a full-time job. It's hard to imagine now, but for many emperors the act of sex wasn't even for personal gratification. It was duty, a sacred obligation to balance the universe through intercourse. You're not just getting busy, you're maintaining cosmic order. And that pressure, yeah, it piles up. You might have your favourite concubines, maybe the soft-voiced Lady Jiao or the feisty Lady Li, but you can't always pick them. You have to spread your yang energy strategically across the harem, matching yin and yang according to twist charts. Too much with one girl and your life force might weaken. Too little, and the empire's rice harvest could fail. You think I'm exaggerating? Twist sex manuals, some stretching back to the Han Dynasty. Warned against reckless indulgence, too much climax, they said, drained your jing, your vital essence, and could bring about your early death. Sleep with moderation or die sexy. Of course, not every emperor obeyed. Some practically held record-breaking sex marathons like Emperor Wu of Jin, who supposedly dropped dead while mid-coitus. A fact, maybe. A moralistic tale passed down by disapproving Confucian historians. Also likely, scholars still debate whether these death by lust stories were true, or just warnings about the dangers of decadence and distraction from proper governance. It's the ancient version of a tabloid headline: Emperor found dead with favourite concubine, but written in calligraphy on bamboo scrolls. So here you are lying back on brocade pillows while a concubine bows before you, eyes lowered, hands trembling slightly, not necessarily with fear, but with calculation. Because for her, this isn't just a night of intimacy, it's a potential promotion. A single pregnancy could mean elevation from a low-ranking maid to the noble mother of a future emperor. But don't get too comfortable. That same pregnancy could make her a target. Poisoned teas, suspicious miscarriages, disappearing servants, it's all part of life in the harem, and it's your job to keep track of it all, or delegate that task to a clever eunuch who probably knows more about your sex life than you do. The harem isn't some free-for-all either. There's a strict hierarchy. The empress stands at the top, followed by imperial consorts, noble concubines, and then the long list of barely seen women whose lives revolve around the hope of a single night with you. Some will live and die in the palace without ever being summoned. Others will rise meteorically, like consort Yang, whose beauty was said to make flowers blush, and whose favour with the Emperor Xuanzong sparked jealousy, war, and eventually rebellion. That's the kind of emotional stakes we're talking about. Want a quirky twist? The Emperor didn't even get to initiate things on a whim. He couldn't just say, "Hey, I'm in the mood." Sex was logged in official court records. Yes, that means bureaucrats kept a detailed account of who you slept with and when. Like a cosmic HR department. These records mattered for genealogy, succession, and even tax purposes. Having a legitimate heir wasn't just about preference, it was a matter of state. And of course, surrounding all this was the heavy air of ritual. The imperial bedroom was silent but for the rustle of robes, the distant clang of bronze bells marking the hour, and the faint murmur of prayers to the ancestors. You'd think with all the pressure the act itself would be tense, maybe even awkward, and it often was. For the concubine, one misstep could mean banishment. For you, a scandal. Yet somehow within these tight margins, passion occasionally bloomed, though it often came with strings attached. So as you lie there, blinking up at a carved dragon hovering above your canopy bed, consider this. Absolute power might let you summon beauty at will, but pleasure here isn't simple. It's political theatre. It's a metaphysical ritual. It's personal danger. You've got 3,000 women vying for your attention, but not one person you can trust fully. Except maybe that one old eunuch who's been with you since you were 10, and even he has been known to gossip. And this is just your first night. You wake to the scent of lotus blossom lingering in the air, and the gentle tapping of bronze bells outside the window screens. Morning light filters through the silk curtains, golden and diffuse. The concubine is already gone, whisked away by eunuchs before dawn to prevent any unauthorized loitering, or the possibility of tampering with imperial bloodlines. She'll be examined, debriefed, and returned to her designated quarters. You, meanwhile, stretch out in the centre of the enormous bed, feeling both godlike and oddly hollow. It's another day in the life of the Emperor, and you're already behind schedule. Today's business is not with ministers or border conflicts, but with something far older and harder to control, your own mortality. You've heard the rumours. Emperors don't just die of illness or assassins. They fade away, drained by desire and worn thin by centuries of ritual. You don't want to be remembered as another exhausted ruler found sprawled across silk sheets, lips blue, with a scroll of twisted sex teachings curled in your hand. So you do what so many before you have done. You consult the alchemists. They arrive in sweeping robes, smelling of ash and dried herbs, carrying jars of glowing powders and scrolls inscribed with looping symbols. Their pitch is always the same. Immortality lies not in stone or sword, but in your own body. Harness your jing, they say. Refine your essence, control your urges, and most importantly, don't spill your seed too often. That's where your power lies. You're skeptical, but not dismissive. After all, you've read about Qinshang, the first emperor, unifier of China, and absolute powerhouse of paranoia and ambition. He was obsessed with immortality. The man ordered the construction of a massive necropolis guarded by 8,000 life-size terracotta soldiers, just in case the afterlife required backup. He also reportedly died after ingesting mercury pills, an ironic twist considering mercury was supposed to make him live forever, and yet you get it. The idea of death coming for someone with divine blood seems ridiculous. You're the axis between heaven and earth, the literal son of heaven. How can the natural world touch you? Unless, of course, you're leaking your life force nightly into embroidered pillows and overworked concubines. So, you study. The Taoist texts from the Han and Tang dynasties are especially illuminating, if also confusing. They describe immortality as a kind of internal war, battles between yin and yang, semen and breath, and desire and discipline. You learn about the practice of Fang Zhongshu, the arts of the bedchamber, where sex is treated not as pleasure but as medicine and ritual. According to these guides, ejaculation is a loss, but intercourse without release, that's mastery. You're meant to draw out the yin energy of the woman, absorb it, circulate it through your own body, and emerge more virile than before. Basically a trick for sex, but with added bureaucracy. The pressure to perform this balance is enormous. The court physicians track your vitality, and your closest eunuchs, who have their own whispered access to secret texts, remind you not to waste the dragon's essence. In a strange way, even your desire has been nationalized. You begin to wonder if pleasure is just another mask for work. One fringe theory you encounter suggests that sexual energy can be redirected to fuel magical abilities, clairvoyance, prophetic dreams, and even flight. You don't really believe it, but part of you wants to, especially when you hear that some emperors try to prolong their lives by sleeping with virgins, particularly young ones, thinking it would renew their yang. That rumour swirls especially hard around Emperor Wu of Han, who supposedly surrounded himself with teenage girls and avoided climax altogether. Did it work? Well, he lived into his 70s, which in ancient China might as well be immortality. But not all immortality quests are so clinical. Some are bizarre. One late Ming emperor reportedly employed a team of astrologers to chart the perfect time for sex to ensure maximum spiritual gain. That meant sleeping with concubines at 3:17 a.m, while facing east on the second Tuesday of a lunar month. If that doesn't kill the mood, nothing will. Still, death looms. You've heard about rulers who try to cheat it only to accelerate their own decline. Mercury poisoning, celibacy-induced depression, and ritual exhaustion. Some scholars argue that the obsession with immortality actually made emperors easier to manipulate. If the right alchemist promised eternal life, he could basically become the emperor's shadow, and in the back of your mind, you keep circling back to Qin Shi Huang. He didn't just build walls and armies, he chased eternal life across the entire empire. He sent fleets eastward to find the legendary isles of the immortals, where sages supposedly lived off dew and moonlight. None of the expeditions returned. Some say they fled to avoid punishment. Others say they found paradise and just didn't feel like sharing. Scholars today still debate whether these voyages were real, allegorical, or an elaborate PR campaign to hide the fact that the Emperor was terrified of dying alone. As you sip a bitter tonic made of crushed pearls and deer antler, you start to see a truth no one says aloud. Sex and death are linked for emperors in a way that's almost poetic. You sleep with hundreds of women, not to celebrate life, but to fight death. Every ritual, every guarded night, every breathless encounter, it's all a kind of gamble. If you win, you extend your life. If you lose, you get remembered as another cautionary tale like Emperor Wen, who was rumoured to be so besotted with his male lover that he ignored state affairs and was ultimately overthrown. Of course, no one will dare say any of this to your face. Your court will continue to bring you elixir, young maidens, and celestial charts. Your eunuchs will still arrange midnight encounters like logisticians planning a campaign, and your alchemists will assure you that your essence is glowing, but you're starting to suspect the truth. The pursuit of immortality might be killing you faster than time ever could. You're lying awake again, not from worry, though there's plenty of that, but because your mind is busy spinning with diagrams of breath, arrows of energy, and swirling vortexes of yin and yang. You've been reading the tower sex manuals again, the really old ones that the eunuchs only bring out under strict orders. These aren't some dusty scrolls filled with pretty poetry. They're anatomical, esoteric, and deeply weird. One of them begins with a line that makes you blink. When the jade stalk enters the Golden Gate, the celestial dragon awakens. Right. So, tonight you're going to awaken a dragon with your anatomy. You laugh softly, then stop because even laughter feels like it might drain your energy. That's the thing about twisted bedroom practices. They make everything feel sacred and slightly dangerous. According to these teachings, sex isn't just a pleasure or a way to make heirs. It's a metaphysical exercise, a chance to align yourself with the cosmos, to strengthen your spirit, and ideally to live forever. You've already met with your test master, an old man with eyebrows so long they curl like calligraphy strokes. He's shown you where to press, when to breathe, and most importantly, when not to finish. Ejaculation is death, he warns with a raspy whisper. Retention is immortality. So now you're practicing the ancient art of jewel cultivation. It's less of a romp and more of a slow, disciplined duel, like tantric yoga performed in silence with the pressure of heavenly balance looming over your bed. The goal is to have sex without climax, to circulate the aroused energy through your meridians like water, through irrigation ditches. You're supposed to inhale deeply at the moment of peak sensation. Lock your muscles, roll your eyes upward, and pull the seed back into the spine. Sounds romantic, right? Your concubine tonight is experienced. She's been trained for this. In fact, some women were specifically raised from childhood within Taoist sects just to become partners in this practice. They're not just lovers, they're energy batteries carefully selected for their yin purity, their age, and sometimes even their star sign. Tonight's partner, Lady Jew, has skin like fresh porcelain, and a way of moving that's more like a ritual dance than seduction. She bows, whispers a mantra you barely catch, and helps you into the proper position. This is less foreplay and more astronomy. The two of you move together slowly, deliberately. Each thrust was paired with an inhalation. Each exhale is meant to ground your essence. It's not just about holding back, it's about transforming the urge into vitality. Supposedly, if done perfectly, you can see visions, flying dreams, or at least avoid gout for a few more decades. And Lady Jew, she's focused. Her eyes are half-lidded in a trance, and she's murmuring things about jade palaces and dew on lotuses. It's beautiful, sort of, but it's also exhausting. Part of you starts to wonder, is this sex or a very elaborate high-stakes nap? There are even warnings in the text that overdoing this, yes, even sacred sex, can lead to loss of soul, spontaneous nosebleeds, and ghost sightings. One story claims that Emperor Leowen of the Western Hand tried to force a girl to have ritual sex every night for a month, and she started levitating and weeping blood. Maybe apocryphal, maybe a ghost story told by court physicians to make you take a night off. Of course, you're not the only one who ever found these rituals overwhelming. There's a story about Emperor Chung of the Han Dynasty, who was so committed to following Taoist bedroom techniques that he reportedly died trying to withhold climax with his favourite consort. Her beauty was legendary. Poets wrote that she danced on the palms of men and left no footprints, and he, poor fool, tried to ride that cosmic wave until his essence broke like a cheap vase. The irony, no air, no immortality, just an embarrassing line in the historical record. But not all scholars buy these stories. Some say the idea that emperors practiced sex as spiritual cultivation was more legend than fact, a way for later dynasties to legitimize or romanticize decadent rulers. Others argue the opposite, that we've underestimated how seriously Taoist metaphysics shaped imperial policy, especially during the Tang and Song periods when the blending of spirituality, medicine, and sex was especially dense. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, part genuine practice, part political theatre. You're starting to feel that theatre now. There's a unit stationed outside the curtain, listening to the rhythm of your breathing. He'll log the encounter, check on your pulse later, and even record how many thrusts occurred. That's right. Imperial Seal comes with performance metrics, and if that sounds invasive, wait until you hear about the essence reports that go directly to court healers. Too sluggish, and you might be prescribed rhinoceros horn powder or tiger bone wine. Too vigorous, and you might be banned from sexual activity for a week to preserve your chi. So, as you lie here, Lady Jew resting beside you like a living statue, your limbs tingling with what might be energy, or maybe just exhaustion, you begin to grasp the weight of it all. This isn't passion, it's pressure. It's a choreographed ritual written in muscle tension and breath. And yes, it's kind of sexy in a mystic performance art kind of way, but it's also exhausting. There's no cuddling afterward, no whispered jokes, just silence, and the knowledge that you've either added one more drop of vitality to your cup or accidentally tipped the whole thing over. As your Twistmaster would say, each drop saved is a day extended. You're not entirely convinced, but in the quiet hours before dawn you like to believe it might be true. You're sitting in the Hall of Supreme Harmony, pretending to listen as your ministers drone on about harvest quotas and provincial disputes, but your mind is still drifting back to last night's silent, breath-synchronized love-making. Or was it breath combat? Hard to say. Either way, it left you with sore legs and a vague sense that your spleen might have moved. But before you can dwell too long on your internal alchemy progress, there's a tap at your side and a discreet whisper. The eunuchs request your attention. You nod and rise with practice gravity. Another meeting, another problem. But this one's happening behind screens. You know what that means? It's bedroom business. In the world of Chinese emperors, there's no true separation between the court and the bed. Politics doesn't stop when the silk robes come off, and right now, your gatekeepers to that intimate world, the eunuchs, have something urgent to report. Now, let's talk about eunuchs. These men are your most trusted advisors, assistants, and occasionally secretaries of seduction. Their roles aren't just to shuffle paperwork and light incense. They are the very glue that holds your harem together. They've been surgically edited. Yes, that kind of edited to ensure absolute loyalty, and of course, to eliminate any chance that the imperial bloodline gets mixed. Their lack of equipment makes them trustworthy in theory, though in practice they've still managed to climb to immense power through sheer cunning. Inside your private hall, the lead eunuch bows low, his voice like parchment rustling. Your Majesty, there was a disturbance last night in the southern pavilion. You raise an eyebrow. Disturbance is never a good word. Turns out 2 lower-ranked concubines got into a screaming match over whose UPI was more likely to be chosen this week. The fight escalated to broken porcelain, bruised cheeks, and one collapsed incense burner. These are the kinds of quiet battles that make up life in the harem. Simmering rivalries, jealousy over scheduling, and calculated attempts to get closer to you. The walking embodiment of divine power, and it's all managed by eunuchs. These men carry your orders, keep the concubines in line, and act as silent witnesses to your most private moments. They even take part in inspection rituals. Yes, they check the concubines before and after a nightly visit, ensuring cleanliness, confirming that no spells or poisons are hidden in garments, and noting any injuries or peculiarities. It's all very thorough, and depending on your mood, either deeply comforting or completely creepy. Eunuchs aren't just glorified butlers, though some become power brokers. During the Tang dynasty, one eunuch named Gaishi was so powerful that he basically ran the court from behind the curtain. Another during the Ming commanded armies, eunuchs controlled information flow, access to your person, and even sometimes falsified reports to protect their favourites or eliminate rivals. You think the ministers are scary. Try crossing a eunuch who knows every intimate detail of your schedule, preferences, and weaknesses. Let's not ignore the elephant, or rather the knife in the room. Becoming a eunuch wasn't just about getting a job at the palace. It involved a painful, often crude operation done in unsanitary conditions with no guarantee of survival. Some were castrated as children by desperate families hoping to earn favour at court. Others did it voluntarily, chasing the dream of status, proximity to power, and wealth. Because yes, a successful eunuch could amass enormous fortunes. He couldn't pass on a name or seed, but he could own land, influence appointments, and even help place an emperor on the throne. In a strange, twisted way, eunuchs lived both above and below society. They were mocked by scholars, feared by generals, and needed by everyone. Some were spiritual guides, others meticulous record keepers, and a few were manipulators of the highest order. And you live among them daily, entrusting them with the safety of your body, your lineage, and your throne. Kind of makes you wonder who's really in charge, doesn't it? One particularly quirky practice you've come to accept is the ritual of the bedtime escort. Each night a eunuch supervises your selected concubine's journey to your chambers. She's bathed, powdered, and wrapped in ceremonial silk. Then Here's the weird part. She's lifted and carried by 2 eunuchs like a sacred offering. Her feet are never to touch the ground during transit. This supposedly prevents her from being tampered with or bringing in evil energy. Also, it guarantees that no woman sneaks into your room uninvited, which actually has happened in the past. Legend has it that during the Song dynasty, a concubine faked her name tag and bribed a low-level eunuch to get in. She was found out later, but not before becoming pregnant. That scandal ended with several exiles, and the eunuch in question was not seen again. Of course, all this makes the eunuch's job more than logistical. It's spiritual too. They are seen as liminal figures, not quite male, not quite female, occupying a third mysterious space that makes them perfect intermediaries. Some even become respected shamans or interpreters of omens. If a eunuch dreams of blood, it might signal war. If he dreams of peaches, it could mean a birth. Dreams are recorded, analysed and discussed in morning briefings. You smile, remembering the time one old eunuch insisted that to dream about frogs meant you should avoid eating fish for a month. You humoured him. Then a rival noble choked to death on a cartilage bone. Coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. There's still debate among modern historians about just how much power eunuchs wielded. Some argue they were scapegoats for broader systemic failures, blamed when dynasties collapsed or emperors became decadent. Others point to hard evidence, edicts signed, wars launched, and empresses chosen under eunuch guidance. Either way, their presence was inescapable, and you, like every emperor before, depend on them. Back in the present, the lead eunuch concludes his report and bows. You thank him, ask for the 2 feuding concubines to be assigned meditation duties, and then you pause. "Bring me Lady May tonight," you say softly. The eunuch nods, makes a discreet note, and backs away into the shadows. Another name added to the scroll, another night orchestrated, another secret kept. And as you return to court business, nodding at a proposal for canal repairs, you can't help but marvel at the strangeness of your reality. You're the most powerful man in the world, and your nights, your most intimate personal moments, are scripted, supervised, and recorded by a staff of surgically altered bureaucrats with better memory than any of your generals. Somewhere outside, a bell rings 3 times, a concubine's bath begins, and you wonder just for a moment what it would be like to be normal. It's late afternoon, and the light is beginning to soften into that honeyed glow that makes even the stone lions of the courtyard look drowsy. You finished court early, one of the rare perks of being emperor when you feel like skipping the details of regional grain disputes. Instead, you're headed toward the western wing of the palace, where someone has been waiting all day. Her name is not recorded in public documents, though everyone knows who she is. She is the most powerful woman in the palace, second only to you, and in some ways far more dangerous. She is the Empress Dowager. She doesn't rise when you enter. She remains on her carved rosewood throne. Her expression was unreadable behind layers of powder, jewels, and perfectly arranged disinterest. It's an art form of appearing both unimpressed and unchallengeable. Her fingers rest lightly on a small carved phoenix, and her lips twitch upward just slightly. She's pleased to see you or amused. With her, it's often hard to tell. Tonight you're not here as a son, stepson, or distant relative, depending on how the dynasty lines were arranged. You're here as emperor, facing the matriarch who once held and may still hold the real reins of power, and she, as always, is testing you. The Empress Dowager knows every rule of the palace. She helped write some of them. She's navigated decades of intrigue, fended off assassins, silenced rivals, and strategically placed her favourites in the harem to control your father or your brother or you. In her presence, even the boldest generals bite their tongues, and yes, once upon a time she was also just a concubine. Clever, young, ambitious, and very, very lucky. You're thinking about all of that as you sip the tea she offers. Osmanthus is light and sweet, but possibly symbolic. Everything with her is symbolic. You remember the stories about Empress Dowager Cixi, who essentially ruled China from behind a curtain for nearly half a century. She started as a low-ranked concubine, bore a son, and manipulated her way into regency with unmatched political precision. When male ministers objected to her involvement, she literally sat behind a silk screen during court meetings and spoke her will through intermediaries. Power without ever having to be seen. Cixi also wielded power in the bedchamber, or rather through it. She decided who saw the emperor and when, especially if the emperor was too young or too ill to make those decisions himself. There are whispers that she sometimes arranged visits from specific concubines, not for their beauty, but for their families. Noble lineages that could be kept close or kept down depending on her whims. Rumour has it she even hand-picked bed testers, women who would warm the emperor's bed before the actual concubine arrived under the pretense of checking the temperature. Imagine that job title. Scholars debate whether Cixi was a monster or a misunderstood genius. Some called her a tyrant who diverted funds to remodel palaces while foreign powers loomed at the gates. Others say she was a savvy operator, the only one holding the fragile Qing court together while the world outside modernized at terrifying speed. The truth, like everything in the palace, probably lies somewhere in the folds of her embroidered sleeves. You're not Cixi's son, but the Empress Dowager across from you has the same energy. She can destroy a man with a sigh, and when she leans in to speak, it's not gossip, it's strategy. "You've been favouring Lady May lately," she says softly, eyes fixed on your teacup. You pause. There it is. The real reason she summoned you. She's been watching, calculating, and perhaps even interrogating the eunuchs you trust. Nothing goes unnoticed in her part of the palace. She has a gentle nature, you say carefully. She has a dangerous uncle, she replies just as carefully. And just like that, the entire room shifts. You're no longer talking about preference or rooms. You're talking about court politics, factional alliances, and the terrifyingly real possibility that too much time spent with the wrong woman could tip the balance of power. In the imperial court, desire is dangerous, not because of what it satisfies, but because of what it promises. An emperor's affection is a currency. Every time you favour someone, you're investing in a family, a faction, or maybe even a future rebellion. It's no wonder that the Empress Dowager, once a concubine herself, understands this better than anyone. She is the living example of what a clever woman can do with limited access to power and a brilliant sense of timing. And she probably knows better than you how the harem works behind the walls. She's likely placed her own favourites among the concubines. Women who report back to her, who watch what you eat, and who smile and whisper things meant to steer you gently in her preferred direction. You think you're in control of your nights, but more than once you've woken up feeling like the pawn in someone else's game. Still your emperor, at least officially, and you remind her of that with a small, deliberate smile. "I'll keep your concerns in mind," you say, rising. but I trust my judgment." She doesn't respond at first. Then, ever so slowly, she bows her head, less a sign of submission than acknowledgement. The conversation is over, but the war continues. As you walk back to your quarters, past marble courtyards and flickering lanterns, you realize just how much of your sex life is not about passion, but control. It's not just about who lies in your bed. It's about who arrange for them to be there, and what ripple that choice will send through the palace. In this world, the Empress Dowager is the grand conductor of desire, not by seduction, but by surveillance. Later that night, Lady May joins you as requested. She's beautiful, kind, and just shy enough to be endearing, but you can't shake the echo of your earlier conversation. As she pours your wine and smiles at you beneath long lashes, you wonder, is she in love with you, or simply playing the role handed to her? Does she know what her uncle is planning? Does she care? You reach for her hand anyway, because even emperors get lonely. Even gods on thrones need someone to look at them like a man, not a title. But when she leans in, her perfume suddenly smells like osmanthus, and you wonder if that too is a message. The next morning you wake with a lingering ache in your chest, not from illness, not from exertion, but from something you can't quite name. Maybe it's the perfume again. Osmanthus. It clung to Lady May's robe, her skin, and even the sheets. Or maybe it's the aftertaste of suspicion curling in your stomach like spoiled wine. You've spent your whole life surrounded by women trained to please you, serve you, and spy on you. And while last night was soft, almost sweet, it was also a reminder that in your world, intimacy is a performance, and trust is as rare as a snowflake in midsummer Beijing. Still, the day rolls forward. You attend to a few perfunctory scrolls, meet briefly with the Minister of Rights, and approve 3 garden redesigns that frankly all look the same. But by early afternoon, something odd catches your attention. A gift arrives. A tiny silk-wrapped parcel from the northern provinces, accompanied by a note from one of your more flamboyant nobles. The parcel contains a shoe, or rather a slipper, and not just any slipper, a lotus shoe. It's almost too small to believe, no bigger than your palm. Decorated with delicate embroidery of butterflies and peach blossoms, the slipper is dainty, soft, and oddly disturbing. You hold it in your hand and think, someone's entire foot used to fit in this, and not just fit but trained, bound, and reshaped to fit, all for beauty, all for desire, foot binding. The term alone makes your toes curl. It began centuries ago, a twisted expression of elegance that became a cultural standard, particularly among the elite. The process started when a girl was as young as 5. Her feet were soaked in warm herbs, her toes folded under, and the entire foot was tightly bound to break the arch and reshape it into a lotus. A perfect foot was ideally 3 inches long. They called them golden lotuses. You call them horrifying. Still, for emperors and aristocrats, lotus feet were considered the pinnacle of eroticism. The smaller the foot, the more refined the woman. The more she limped, the more she wobbled, the more effort it took for her to move, the more desirable she became. It was beauty through suffering, fragility as fetish. And make no mistake, it was a fetish. You've heard the stories. Emperors who requested their concubines walk barefoot on silk just to watch the imprints their bound feet made. Some demanded their concubines wear nothing but their embroidered lotus shoes during private audiences. There are even legends, some whispered, some written, of rulers who preferred to never see the foot unwrapped, preserving the mystery like some sacred scroll. One particularly strange anecdote involves an emperor from the late Ming who collected the unwashed bindings of his favourite concubines and stored them in lacquered boxes, perfumed and catalogued like scrolls of poetry. Whether it was the scent, the idea of devotion, or just the sheer oddity of the practice is unclear, but it says something about how obsession was nurtured, even exalted behind palace doors. But you, sitting on your throne holding this soft, silent shoe, you're uneasy. Because while part of you understands the allure, who doesn't want something unattainable? Another part of you sees the madness in it. These women born into a world where the shape of their feet determined their future had no choice. Bound feet meant they couldn't run, couldn't dance freely, and couldn't stand for long. It made them dependent, graceful, and most importantly to those in power, contained. The practice was never mandated for palace women, yet many volunteered or were volunteered by their families to undergo the binding ritual. To be considered for concubinage, girls had to conform to the emperor's taste, and if small feet were the trend, then broken bones were just part of the audition. You've seen the files, the detailed lists of potential concubines, including not just their height, family rank and skin tone, but also their foot size, arch tightness and walking grace. This wasn't selection, it was curation. Of course, not every emperor indulged in the foot fetish. Some rebelled against it quietly, preferring women who could ride horses, dance without falling, or walk beside them in the garden without leaning on a cane. During the Yuan dynasty, when Mongol rulers held power, foot binding was looked down upon. They favoured robust women with strong bodies and warrior blood over wilting flowers. But by the Ming and Qing, it had roared back into popularity. Some scholars argue this was about cultural anxiety, a way to reassert control and tradition in times of social upheaval. Others say it was simply the natural endgame of aesthetic obsession. Even today, debates rage on. Was foot binding about beauty, control, class, or all of the above? Some historians emphasize the agency of the women involved, suggesting that some chose it willingly for the status it brought. Others argue that calling it a choice is ridiculous when the alternative was poverty, shame, or exclusion. In your palace, it's just another sign that even beauty comes at a price, and women have always paid more. You set the lotus shoe aside and dismiss the eunuch who delivered it. Later that evening, as you take a walk through the jasmine garden, you see one of your concubines approaching. She's young, probably barely past her 15th year, and her gait is delicate, too delicate. You watch her walk with that careful, slow, swaying motion, as if every step is both effort and performance. When she bows, you catch the glint of tiny silk shoes beneath her robe. Peach blossoms just like the ones in the gift. You ask her name. She says it softly, Lanair, and then you do something unexpected. You ask her to sit beside you. Not walk, not bow, not perform, just sit. She's confused, maybe nervous, but she complies. And together you watch the koi swim in slow circles through the moonlit pond. Her hand trembles slightly in her lap. Your shoes, you say gently. Do they hurt? She pauses, looks at you, and then with a voice no louder than a breath says, yes. It's the first honest answer you've heard all day. You don't sleep much that night, not because of discomfort or nightmares or state affairs, though those would be good excuses, but because you're thinking about shoes. Not your own, of course. You haven't tied your own laces or fastened your embroidered slippers in years. No, you're thinking about Linnea and the thousands of others like her. Women are trained from childhood to move like swans and break like porcelain. Your bed is large, warm, and guarded on all sides. But tonight, it feels like a quiet stage, a little too quiet. You roll onto your side in either wooden box on your nightstand. It contains the up-UP, the name tags of concubines waiting for selection. There are hundreds of them, maybe thousands, each lacquered and labelled, stored in silver trays, rotated, cooled, and cleaned daily by your eunuchs. Most of the names you recognise only vaguely. They arrive like wind chimes in a storm, delicate, interchangeable and temporary, but each of them, in theory, gets a chance. Here's how it works. Each night, the Court of Internal Affairs, yes, that's a real department, delivers the name trays to your sleeping quarters. The tags are sorted by rank. The Empress at the top, then Imperial consorts, noble ladies, talented women, and so on, all the way down to the lowly attendants. Even the titles feel like a game or a marketing campaign. Sleep now. Let yourself sink deeper into that perfect relaxation. Your eyelids are heavy. So heavy it would take too much effort to open them now. Your limbs feel pleasantly weighted, impossible to move even if you wanted to, which you don't. You just want to drift all the way down into deep, restful sleep. That's it. Just let go completely. The day is done. The work is finished. Nothing more required of you now except to rest, to renew, to dream perhaps of different possibilities, different worlds. But for now, just sleep deep and peaceful, easy and calm. Sleep now. Sleep well. Drifting deeper with each breath down and down into perfect, complete rest.